February. We're about 2.5 weeks away from the Oscars. My name is JW Colwell, and I hope you love our show. And this is my co-host, Rich Drees, one of the great movie guys I've ever met. Rich, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing okay. I'm still having trouble hearing you even with this. I don't know if it's a volume issue on your side or because the opening stuff came through.
How about now?
It's a tiny bit better.
Now?
No.
Okay. Odd. How about now?
Not really. Anybody in the chat there already? How do we sound? Okay.
JW's mic isn't on. Fun with mics. It should be on. It's connected.
Do you have StreamYard set to that mic? Do you have more than one microphone? Is it accidentally?
Let me check. Hold on.
Okay.
Hold on. Now?
Oh, hey, there we go.
Okay, better?
Much better. In fact,
okay.
I'm going to take these stupid things off because I hate wearing them.
Stupid headphone. Or wrong mic. Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're not going to talk about the mic troubles. But thank you, Joe Ridgely. Good evening to you as well.
Joe,
if you like this show, please like and subscribe on our YouTube channel, or on the Facebook page, or on the Instagram page, or on the Thread page, all the different page, any places. Just find us and like us. I am very excited about tonight, Rich, because we have, widely regarded as one of the greatest movies of all time. And it's not like that's not hyperbole, right?
No.
We're talking about one of the actual greatest movies of all time, and actually one of the most inspirational movies of all time. When you talk to filmmakers, people in film, this is a movie that they see as youngsters and go, that's what I want to do. I want to do that. I want to make that movie. And basically just want to see everything and do everything and make it. 5 minutes late and didn't pre-show. We did pre-show. That's why we had a problem and we're trying to figure it out. Shush. You shush. 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 Also,
I
is
pre-showed,
nice.
but it was with whiskey, so
Yeah. Let's talk. We didn't get to talk about this last week, so I want to start with this tonight before we get going.
Okay.
Rich Drees, how do you feel? It didn't beat Superman in the amount of streams or watches or likes or whatever the hell they judge it by. But I'm kind of in love with this trailer. I think the key to the whole trailer is they're not showing any of the super big action sequences. They're not showing any of the villains really in a big way, what they're doing, what they're up to. But what it does get right, Rich, is at least 3 out of the 4 are indeed properly in their correct mindset / character stage that we need for a Fantastic Four movie, correct?
Mm-hmm.
I think Ben Grimm, I think the Thing is right there. I think it's actually the best design they've ever had for him on screen, even though he's a little smallish for some people. I think Sue is, we've had a lot of good-looking women playing Sue, but not a lot of stuff behind Sue Storm, who's one of the strongest people in the MCU. So it's good to see her strong and talking about family and being motherly and dealing with everything. And they get Johnny right, because Johnny, you can't really fuck up too bad. Don't give him any pathos. Just kind of make him goofy. Make sure he says flame on. You don't really need, he needs to be angry when he needs to be angry, and he needs to be a little bit immature. The only one I'm concerned about is there's not a lot for Reed to do in the trailer, and they don't give anything away of how that's going to look, right? Because
they might still be working on that. They still might be trying to figure that out. I don't know. I'm fine with that. I mean,
no, I agree.
Powers, that's the potential to look the goofiest. So maybe hold that in your back pocket for a little bit, get people interested, and then go, oh, by the way, we got this goofy ass thing going on too.
No, we definitely got Thing right for the first time ever. He looks and sounds and you know, and it's not the when he puts his finger in and there's a rock sound, which is perfect. It's when he goes to look at the televisions and he's wearing the Ben Grimm suit from the comics. That's comics perfect for when he wants to go out to the movies or something. It's that scene where it's kind of the pathos of Ben Grimm is, I'm the best looking pilot he's ever been with, and then it cuts to the reaction shot of him looking through the fucking stained glass window, or not stained glass, but the glass window.
Yeah,
and you're just like, that's the tragedy of Ben Grimm. That's so
true.
You know, and there's a lot of good stuff in the trailer.
Okay, well, first of all, point of disclosure. I participated in Marty Langford's Fantastic Four documentary about the Roger Corman shelved Fantastic Four movie. So I do have some biases about certain things. I think that movie has had the best script of the live action Fantastic Fours we've seen so far. I think it really kind of hit the family beats perfect. This one, though, and I've been saying for years that the ideal Fantastic Four movie should be Camelot era 1960s, dawn of the space race, a little bit of that 60s optimistic futurism that you had in all of your design elements and things like that, like the Futura concept car that they remodeled and turned into the Batmobile for the 1966 Batman movie. You know, all stuff like that. I was like, that's the era you need to do a Fantastic Four movie in. And it looks like that's what we're getting. I know Peyton Reed, the director, had been trying to get a Fantastic Four movie off the ground in that milieu. And at the time, 20th Century Fox just wasn't having it. They just didn't want to do it that way.
We'd much rather make crappy movies in the present.
Yes.
Terrible, awful Fantastic Four movies. Although, you know, I know people like the first two.
Reed turns around, though, and makes Down with Love, also set in that kind of milieu. And that's a fucking perfect film. So we lost out there, I think, but at least we won in getting Down with Love made, because that's a wonderful film. And this looks fantastic, to coin a phrase. But, yeah, so
yes, July is going to be super fantastic, Rich. There, I said it.
I think July is going to be a great time to be going to the movies over and over and over again. People are like, "Oh, is the one audience going to cannibalize another movie or something?" No, people are going to be all boats. There's 3 big films coming. Even if I thought
all boats rise, this is an all boats rise thing. This is. You know, Jurassic World feeds into Superman, feeds into Fantastic Four, and you might have 3 of the biggest movies of the summer just sitting there, kind of just like, and multiplex is just packed to the brim. The Jurassic World trailer isn't bad either. Rebirth. I've heard so many interesting things about Scarlett Johansson and how much she's wanted to be in a Jurassic Park movie over the last a week and a half, about how she, every time there was a new Jurassic Park movie, she told her agent, I want to be in that movie. And now she's finally in one, and it looks batshit insane. So, that's a win. Because it looks like, you know, they're going to try to really, you know, make an interesting kind of concept film where, you know, we don't have 100 kajillion people to eat. There's only like 5, but we care about every one of them.
Yeah. There needs to be more human chow on that boat as they're going to the island. Because
there'll be people. There'll be red shirts. There's always red shirts. But I mean, it just sets up the 3-week period between July 2nd, technically July 1st, and July 22nd as the biggest, like it is the biggest super, fragilistic expialidocious movie going event of the summer. You know what I mean? Like, and May doesn't look bad either. The new Thunderbolt trailer premiered yesterday. We're getting more on that. I think, I know I'm excited about Brave New World, but I know I'm slightly concerned about Brave New World. Hear me out. I'm slightly concerned over the reshoots. I'm slightly concerned over the revamping of the Serpent Society. I'm slightly concerned. I'm concerned. And I think Thunderbolts may be the movie we're waiting for. Because while I love Sam and I like Harrison Ford playing, General Ross, Thunderbolt Ross, I think the characters in Thunderbolts are characters like Yelena is somebody we really love. We've only seen her once or twice. And audiences love her. You know what I mean? And Bucky is somebody that audiences haven't seen a lot since Endgame, and we love him. You know what I mean? And Red Guardian is somebody that you can build a thing around. You know what I mean? And then I read, I don't know. I just think that movie has potential. And then I also heard it was originally going to be written and directed by James Gunn, and it's like looks very Gunnish. But it also looks, they kind of added more stuff.
Never heard that Gunn was at any point tied to that Thunderbolts movie. I thought he came back to Marvel just to finish off Guardians, and then he was already
there was an article about it that one of the reasons it looks so Gunnish is because they were trying to woo him back with the script. It's like, please come back. But the new poster that's out is the best of the posters the best of the stuff they've had for it. Of course, I can't find it now, but that's okay. It's basically them in the asterisk. It's all of them standing in the asterisk, with each kind of taking a corner, a piece of the asterisk and standing in it. So it's Thunderbolts, Giant, and then asterisk. And the asterisk is the Avengers were not available.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the summer is looking up. Let's also talk, Rich. Two things. I want to talk about two movies I saw. Love Hurts, not great.
That's what I've heard. I'm disappointed. I'll probably still catch up with it this weekend, but
there's nothing there. It's like this weird. Imagine if the John Wick franchise was like an hour and 10 minutes. Because it feels like it's an hour and 20 minutes, hour and 15 minutes. Like so it starts immediately. So there's no real. Now, is he great? Yes. Do Ariana DeBose and him have chemistry? No. It's just this weird. It's like a series of vignettes that could have been interesting. That and then the movie gets usurped from him and Ariana DeBose by a weird couple in the middle that kind of drift together, and you're like, the audience is rooting for this couple to drift together because one's stuck in an office job she hates, and the other one is a poet called the Raven who also tries to kill people. So it's very much from the 90s Tarantino, quirky for quirky's sake, and then it's kind of like 7 minutes of nothing. Now the other movie I want to talk about quickly, I have stills for it. If you like horror films, and I know you don't, but if you did, I'm going to say to you that this movie at some point is going to be a cult movie that is beloved. Hard Eyes is fantastic for many reasons. But the main reason, Rich, is that it is essentially two movies in one. It's clearly a romantic comedy, and then it is clearly a slasher film, and those things get mixed and jumbled, and it starts with a meet cute in a coffee shop, and it's a really good script that is really expertly performed. The kills are good for slasher fans, but it is a perfect date movie in the sense that there is a really good couple, and they're played by good young actors, right? And and they're cute. They're super cute, and they have chemistry, and but they're not a couple in the movie, and they're trying they're like, why are you trying to kill us? Because killer only kills couples on Valentine's Day. And like, why are you trying to kill us? We're not even a couple. We just kissed once. We kissed once because my ex was walking by. Like they're making, and it's really well done. I very, very rarely see a slasher movie that can turn a convention on its head. This is one of the. It could also go to say that Christopher Landon, who is responsible for Freaky and Happy Death Day and Happy Death Day to You, is part and parcel of the creative team in this movie. He's not the director or writer, but he's the producer. And he just has whatever it is about finding interesting things to deploy in movies that you think you've seen already. He knows how to do it. Like Freaky is one of the best conventional. Like if you're going to tell me we're going to combine Silence of the Lambs and Freaky Friday, like it sounds like a fucking. It sounds like something out of The Player, where it's like, what if it's, you know what I mean? And whatever it is, he has it. And this is a real interesting thing. Kills are going to satisfy the kill hungry crowd, and the romance, they're a cute couple. Like you're rooting for them to not get sliced and diced by this hard-eyes killer. I enjoyed it immensely. Anyway, also, Rich, where you looked at this weekend and you said, "Hey, Amelia Perez might be heading towards whatever," and then Amelia Perez hit a rock on the train tracks. We have
hit 3. It hit 3.
It hit 3. It hit some big rocks. We have a new front runner in the clubhouse, and this movie is all of us. I haven't seen it yet. I think I'm going to go see it.
Dude,
I haven't seen it. Relax. I'm going to see it.
Saw it in October. Come on.
Rich, I missed it. It played for a week in my theater, and then I missed it, and then I just haven't gotten around to it because I was waiting for they're doing an AMC thing on February 28th where you can see all the Oscar movies in one day, and it just so happens every movie I haven't seen is playing in a theater is playing that day. Every other one on the Sunday is playing that I have seen in theaters. So like I'm still here. Conclave, Nickel Boys, and Nora, Substance are all playing on the same day. So
wow,
that's what I'm doing. But this is the new front runner in the clubhouse.
If you have the chance to kind of go schedule, the order, put the Substance as the last one.
It is the last one.
Okay,
it already is. It's at 9:45. Honora is right before it. Nickel Boys is at 3. Conclave is at 1, and the other one is at 11. And then there's a dinner break somewhere in there. It's $40. It's a pretty good deal. Anyway, but this movie is the new leader in the clubhouse because Rich, not only did it win the Producers Guild of America, Rich, it also won the Directors Guild of America, which means that it's a definite big shift. Like,
and these are Critics' Choice.
And the Critics' Choice. But again, I always look for guilds. Guilds are important. Nora is up for the SAG award, which is the other big, the SAG Ensemble Award, which is the other big award. That's best picture at the SAG Awards. I think it's partially because of what happened. I'm just glad Amelia Perez isn't going to win. Like, if that's where we're headed, I'm glad. I'm sad that it had to happen this way, but I think at least
I think one of those, the voting was just about finished or had just finished when the Amelia Perez scandal kind of broke open. So this might be an indication of how people are just generally feeling.
Right, and Nora's been
the only thing I see as like a bad thing is the way the preferential ballot works for Best Picture for the Academy Awards. If people are like, well, I really want to vote for this for number one, but I'll throw I'll throw Amelia Perez down at 2 or 3, and not enough votes happen in that first part of the category that they have to start going to the second and the third place people, and how that math works. That could be a weird, unusual path for Amelia Perez to take the Oscar. I hope not.
I think it's the most open. I think it's the most open year we've had in quite some time, where we haven't had a real, like, we've had front runners here or there. Like, I mean, you know, I think everybody kind of like jumped on a little bit of a bandwagon with Amelia Perez, and then Conclave was kind of like the soup du jour, and then The Brutalist is like, oh, it's 4 hours, and you know, of course it's going to get Oscar nominations and yada yada. And then now it's just like, maybe we're just going to pick the movie that's better, that everybody likes, that there's no questions about, and we're not going to pick a horror film because we do that like once every 30 or 40 years. So let's not get out of hand. But that, I think,
we're not 40 years from Silence of the Lambs yet.
Yeah, we're not 40 years away from it yet. I wish that wasn't a true statement, but that's kind of where we're at. But yeah, I think also, I just think there are movies that people love from a different perspective, right? Where it's just, you know, when you fall in love with these, when you fall in love with these movies, Baker's been making good movies for the last 3 or 4 years, right? He's made, you know, really interesting kind of
making great movies for 10 years at least. I mean, I've been following his career since Tangerine, which was 2018, I think. Is just because like some of his earlier stuff before that is a little hard to find, although two of his films from before Tangerine are getting a Criterion release in a couple of months. So I'm excited about that, actually.
That shows you've made it.
That's a blind buy for me. And they're also putting out Nora too on Criterion. So whether or not, you know, it gets, you know, Oscar love, you know, in a couple of weeks, I'm still thinking, you know, Anora has, you know, a certain critical cachet that people are going to be talking about this movie for a good long time.
Yeah, Tangerine was 2015. Red Rocket, Florida Project was 2017.
Okay,
Red Rocket 2021. His early ones are Takeout and Starlet.
Yeah, those are
the ones that are getting Criterion.
Yeah,
but I mean, so I mean, I just think it's. I think Hollywood, every time there's a hard reset, like I think the hard reset for Amelia Perez happened, and now it's just a lot of people kind of hoping and wishing that it doesn't affect Zoe Saldana, right? I mean, let's just hope it doesn't impact her, is where we're at.
Yeah.
But then, you know, Amelia Perez escapes true Oscar history by winning at least one category, which is probably, so if it wins 1 or 2, it kind of just can go away. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like but if it doesn't win any, then it will get talked about as, you remember that time that movie came out that got 13 Oscar nominations, and then that one lady said a lot of bad things online, and
that's a really crappy way to wind up in the history books. And honestly, you know, I feel I'm kind of disappointed that what should have been a very positive, uplifting, historic nomination has kind of really just shit the bed as it has.
That's a word for it. That's a word for it. We'll just see what happens. We're 3 weeks away from the Oscars, which is always
Gina Carino, the whole thing.
She Caranoed out. My God.
I'm going to Urban Dictionary and adding that right now.
Caranoed. I'm busting chops. Remember the old cartoons would turn into the Thing. Yeah.
Thing Ring, do your thing, baby.
Mixtron did amazing for that. Mixtron did an amazing job as set director and SFX for the budget that it had for that film, Rich. You know what? Maybe at some point we'll get the Corman thing. Like, I get the idea that once Marvel gets a chance to actually show what it wants to do, it might ease up and we might see a Corman movie. Sorry you're late. You're perfectly timed, Gabe, because we're getting ready to start talking. Let's talk epics. Let's talk one of the epics. Let's talk Lawrence of Arabia, Rich.
Okay.
Okay.
Hey, Gabe.
This movie shot for 16 months is the first place I want to start, because 16 months, Rich, and they had.
We were talking last week about David Lean's previous film shooting for 250 days as like ridiculously long. That's still under a year.
Yes. This movie shot, and I was like reading it and just I could not believe it, right? They started shooting May 15th, 1961. And the shooting ended on September 21st, 1962. Holy shit.
Same.
And then you start reading about, like, it was shot in Jordan and Morocco and Spain and, you know, all these places. And like, they ran into trouble in shooting in, you know, some of the Arab countries because of, you know, whatever. So they had to shift and start shooting in Spain. They were using Super Panavision, which is what eventually, like, you know, basically using 65 millimeter negative that was printed onto 70 millimeter positive, and they had to leave room for soundtracks. They had, like, there is so much interesting stuff with regards to how the film was shot. Like, for example, that particular film stock, Rich, because it was such a wide ratio, during projection, they basically started noticing that there was fluttering within frames. So then Lean had to go back and reshoot things, modify blocking, moving actors to diagonal movement as opposed to, like. And the thing is, Rich, like, when you're watching it, you don't think anything about it, but it creates the magic of the movie, because, like, you're like, oh, that's a real interesting shot, or, oh, he's walking away from the camera, but it's like at a diagonal inverse, and then you start reading about it. It's like the fucking camera stock didn't work, so David Lean had to work around it, right? And that's the kind of thing when we do this show, where you just, like, when you deep dive into these movies. Lean's had a great comment. Somebody asked him, can you handle CinemaScope and Super Vanavision? And he said, if one had an eye for composition, there'd be no problem. Like, this is David Lean saying if somebody has an eye for competition, there's no problem. So, like, basically saying, yeah, I'm okay, I guess. I don't know what the fuck's going on with the fucking phone stock. You know what I mean? Like, it's David Lean being very pithy, but also, like, yeah, if I can get my shit together with regards to like making scene compositions, I should be okay. And you read that shit and you're just like, what the fuck? Right? You're like, oh my God. Because this is one of the greatest film directors of all time, having trouble with film stock. Some questions. I had an opportunity to meet Roger Corman once. Oh, Gabe, I unfortunately didn't take it. Oh no, but no once.
Oh man,
damn autocorrect. And then Lawrence of Arabia is one of my father's favorite movies, along with Casablanca. Casablanca, by the way, playing around the country because it is very close to Valentine's Day. So always take those chances when you can, and try to pay attention. Yeah, see it on the big screen and try to pay attention to the fact that there are a bunch of midgets working on a small plane that looks like a plane, but it's just a couple of midgets doing some work. Fun backwards fact. But when you're looking at it, right, so this films for a year. They have to move. They have all. There's all kinds of tension with the Arabic cast and crew, right? One thing occurs where, as they're filming in Jordan at some point, King Hussein, by the way, government of Jordan, all in, very helpful. Loved having the film there, right? He was very cordial with everybody in the cast and crew. So he's actually one of the more cordial people in the Middle East when he was still alive. But he was very welcoming to Western things. But they did have a slight problem. Basically, Henry Oscar did not speak Arabic perfectly, but he in the film is reciting the Quran, which is a big no-no in Islamic countries. But the Jordanian officials granted permission for him to be able to do it on condition that they had an imam on set to ensure there were no misquotations. So when you say the movie filmed for 16 months, you start getting an idea of how big and unwieldy this project is. Hello, JD Smith. Welcome to the show. Good to see you. Digi Artist, we appreciate you coming. But so you get an idea of how big the project is. And we're not even into casting or script yet, Rich, because that's also messy on this production. That's 16 months. The screenplay is one of the bigger messes. Just the idea that the screenplay wasn't ready on most days. So it's very much like, when you hear about background stuff, just different things. Two different people get credited for the screenplay. One got fired midway through because, Michael Wilson wrote the original draft. Lean didn't like it. Primarily because it wasn't focused on Lawrence, and basically he wanted it more human or focusing more on him. So Lean hired Robert Bolt to rewrite the script to make it a character study. So the characters in scene are Wilson's invention, but almost all the dialogue is Bolt. So you have two different, and that you can see it, right? You can see it in the scenes. You know what I mean?
It's structured fantastically in how it starts off with his death, and the whole movie's basically a flashback, but it kind of draws you into his character. You start to see how he's reacting to his situation, how he grows to admire these people, and then he goes back to the British officers, and the British officers don't know what to make of him. End of the first half, and then what we get second.
Well, then we get more political and more like the idea that he's been doing all this work with an eye towards like Arab freedom or Arab revolution, and he basically gets told at one point in the second half of the movie, hey, it's not going to work. When we talk about him in this particular case, I think we should bring up it's a good time to go, this is his movie. This is a Peter O'Toole coming out party. He is absolutely spectacular in every conceivable way. And the thing is, he wasn't the original. Like there was a little bit of fighting production wise about the casting, right? So the casting is another big thing when you look at the production of this movie. Peter O'Toole wasn't Peter O'Toole yet, right? This is essentially his introductory performance, and so Albert Finney was the first choice. He basically didn't want to sign a long-term contract. Sam Spiegel at the time, who also produced Bridge on the River Kwai with David Lean directing, basically made every actor that was in a Sam Spiegel movie sign a contract exclusively with Sam Spiegel. So Albert Finney had to say, was like, no. Brando offered the part. Anthony Perkins offered the part. Could have been a totally different career trajectory for Anthony Perkins. Montgomery Clift was also in the running, but Sam Spiegel hated Montgomery Clift so much as a person. Just Sam Spiegel could not stand Montgomery Clift, who was, very famously very dramatic and very, somebody that a gutsy person like Sam Spiegel could not apparently stand in the 60s. Right. So it's, so Montgomery Clift, who I could have, like, you could maybe see it. You know what I mean? But Spiegel had worked with Clift on Suddenly Last Summer. Then you have we bring Alec Guinness into the fray. Alec Guinness had played T.E. Lawrence in a play in Britain, in England, called Ross, and was briefly considered for the part. But then David Lean fell in love with Peter O'Toole, and then the rest is history. Now, one of the main criticisms of the casting for Peter O'Toole is a huge man, 6'2".
Mm-hmm.
T.E. Lawrence was only 5'5". But it's one of those movies where this particular actor was so right. David Lean saw him and just said, this. Because look at the blue eyes, look at the face. Like, he is as chiseled and as, like, perfectly conceived in this film. Like, it is, what do they say? What do the ladies say? Piercing blue eyes, Rich? Piercing, like,
yeah.
Like, yes, my wife has piercing blue eyes, but so does Peter O'Toole. And then Alec Guinness coming back for some more, plays King Faisal, which we're going to talk about a little bit legacy-wise later. But for two reasons. One, we knew that on Bridge on the River that Alec Guinness and David Lean did not get along. But also now we're talking about it a little bit because Alec Guinness is playing an Arab person, right? So it's not something that would happen in today's Hollywood. So it has to be discussed.
But that is. I don't want to say it's unfortunate. It's a product of the time. One of those things we, as film fans, continually have to wrestle with. And you're right. If they were to remake this movie today, they would be doing a fool's errand, first of all. But they would also.
Who's signing up for that shit? That's not happening. But also, like, if it wasn't going to be Alec Guinness, it was Laurence Olivier. You know what I mean? Like, so, and then everybody else comes into play. Pick a British guy, any British guy. Then, then it becomes also, like, the other side, the weird casting side. Anthony Quinn takes it very seriously that he's playing a real life person, right? Ada Obu Tai, right, is the character name. So he started applying his own makeup. He had pictures. He was whatever. And one of the great on-set anecdotes is that David Lean ran into him, didn't know Anthony Quinn was doing his own fucking makeup, and said, call Anthony Quinn and say we don't need him anymore because they found the guy. And that they were replacing him with Anthony Quinn. And then the other big story after casting.
Well, he's rocking that crazy prosthetic nose.
Yes, it's a prosthetic nose, but he was doing his own makeup, Rich. So here's a guy, a pretty big actor in the 50s and 60s, who's doing his own goddamn makeup because he wants the part, he wants to look the part. And again, it's another area where it's a non-Arab playing an Arab character, but that's, we're going to end that in a moment because Omar Sharif comes into play, and it's Omar Sharif's opening salvo of his career as well. He'd been in other things, but this is the one where he kind of jumps up and just kind of, you know what I mean? He gets lucky because people wanted to play the role but couldn't because they had a weird Tin Man type situation with the contact lenses, right? Mm-hmm. And then basically he was Omar Sharif was originally supposed to play one of the boys that guides Lawrence, that is helping him, like his little friends. And eventually he gets bumped up because all the other actors eventually drop away, and they need somebody to play. They need somebody to play Sharif Ali, Ibn al-Karish. You know what I mean? So it all comes together, right? You know what I mean? Fun fact: Jose Ferrar is in the movie for 5 minutes. He is paid $25,000, which is more than Peter O'Toole and Omar Sharif made combined on this movie, and a Porsche, Rich. And if you ask Jose Ferrar,
it was far better known than the other two, you know, who are just coming into the business.
But it's one of those things where it's like, let's see what happens. Yeah,
Miguel
Jose Ferrar. Somebody else, Jose Ferrar. But if you ask Jose Ferrar what his best moment on film is, he often cited Lawrence of Arabia. So I think that's interesting.
Was he married to Rosemary Clooney at this time? I'm trying to remember where that whole timeline happens.
I have no idea. Let's see where he was married to Rosemary Clooney. I was married Uta Hagen, 1938 to 1948. Phyllis Hill, 1948 to 1953. Rosemary Clooney, 1953 to 1961.
Okay, there we
are. And then 1964 to 1967. So they got back together and then they got re-divorced. And then finally ended up with Stella McGinn. One of the weirdest questions you've ever asked during our production talk. Was he married to Rosemary Clooney? I think that's a question for every show.
Well, we all know
were they married?
Miguel for our cousins.
No, but I'm just saying. I think it's fun where it's like we can do it as a. Were they married to Rosemary Clooney at this point? Every week. So every week, just were they married to Rosemary Clooney?
Was he married to Rosemary Clooney at this point?
Did so, you know, with all of that, you have, you know, it's still a good production. Nothing like where nothing like the last David Lean movie we did last week, Bridge on the River Kwai, where everybody wanted to kill each other. This is a different production. Everybody is very happy, right? Yeah. For the most part, like it doesn't ever.
On the Blu-ray set, there is a really nice hour-long documentary on the making of this film, and they got most people there, even if it's just in like older interviews. So you have O'Toole, you have Omar Sharif, you have some old David Lean, you have the production designer, you have and then I'm blanking on her last name, the woman who edited the film, all talking about this film, you know, telling little stories, not like the big broad production stuff that we generally cover, but like little things like, oh, I remember this one day where, you know, somebody started, you know, cracking up on the set, you know, and we all kind of went around and we couldn't get the shot because we were all just had the fit of the giggles, you know. It was fun stories like that, as well.
And V Coates. And V Coates is her name.
And Coates, yeah.
Yeah, and apparently
so I would recommend checking that out if you haven't.
Right, and O'Toole and Sharif became thick as thieves. Like they end up becoming really good friends that end up like, if you watch things during the 60s and 70s, they were palling around a lot. They did a lot of cool shit, like in a, you know, just cool things.
The film premiered in London, and then they wanted to send just O'Toole over to America for the American premiere, because they wanted to kind of focus in on him in the advertising and the marketing of the film. And O'Toole was like, no, Omar's got to come too, man, or I'm not going.
We're going to have a party in New York is what that is. Yeah. It's essentially my favorite year, him and Omar Sharif. By the way, my favorite year, if you haven't ever watched it, I can't recommend it highly enough.
I was just thinking about that movie the other day. I need to give that a
I was thinking about that movie every time Peter O'Toole comes into our purview. Every time there's something Peter O'Toole-ish. Tally-ho! I'm not an actor. I'm a movie star. Anyway, last thing on production, the film score is composed by Maurice Jarre. Now, Maurice Jarre, one of the greatest film composers of all time, but at the time of this movie, Rich, not well known. And it's
he was
basically
not
he was not right. He was not Maurice Jarre. This is where he becomes Maurice Jarre. Two people turned it down: William Walton and Malcolm Arnold. They were both unavailable, and then Jarre was given 6 weeks to compose 2 hours of orchestral music for Lawrence. So what I have learned in my 2 weeks is that Sam Spiegel and David Lean are not big on giving musicians a chance to find their inner Kendrick Lamar. And so I just think it's really odd. This is the second time we're talking about this where they gave a composer so little time. Also, when they go to do the score for the London Philharmonic Orchestra, Sir Adrian Boult is the conductor of the score's film credits, but he did not conduct the score because he couldn't adapt to the timing of the cue that Jarre had put in. So Jarre actually conducted the music. So not only was the composer, but when you listen to vast swaths of music in the movie and whatever, it's Maurice Jarre conducting a composition he made. It becomes Maurice Jarre's first Academy Award movie. It's now considered one of the greatest scores of all time. And basically, Sam Spiegel had basically set up. I want two different things. I want an Eastern and a British score. And so he had originally intended for somebody to make one side and one the other, and it just didn't work out. And they eventually had to use Maurice Jarre. And Rich, thank Christ for Happy Accidents, because it's one of the greatest fucking film scores in the history of what. It's got everything. It's bombastic. It's got quiet moments. It's got rousing. It's. I would imagine that if you ask John Williams, who is my composer, right? Probably yours too. Our composer. He's composed our life. He turned 93 the other day. Happy birthday, John Williams, by the way. That I would imagine that this is a score that people had on their fucking soundtracks in Hollywood going, how do you fucking do this? This is amazing. This is incredible. And also a shout out really quick while we're talking about music, a shout out to the Hollywood Nights, which is one of the greatest comedies made in the 80s. And of course they have the song that is part of Lawrence Arabia that is not actually part of Lawrence Arabia, but it could. This British guy came to fight the Turkish. Just saying. It could have happened. It could have happened. So where do we head, Rich? We head to box office. This was fun. This box office is astounding because it's 4 years after the Bridge on the River Kwai, right? Bridge on the River Kwai was still making money, by the way, when this movie came out.
I was just about to say it was probably still in circulation, just the way distribution.
It was still making fucking money, Rich, because I found a way to find the. So I went on. We use a site called you've turned me onto a site called The Numbers, The Numbers, which is a great box office tracking site. There was no reason to talk about box office this week because there wasn't any. But production budget for Lawrence Arabia is 15 million. Bridge on the River Kwai was 3. So we jumped 5 times budget wise. Also, the maximum number of theaters Lawrence of Arabia played on any given weekend during its run was 30. And then it branched out in the United States, and it played 47 other times where you actually had to pre-order tickets to go. So it's one of the truly, it literally was a touring show, right? Worldwide. Well, first off, domestic box office, $37.4 million. So it beats Bridge on the River Kwai by $3 million. It also beats Bridge on the River Kwai international box office because it grosses 32 internationally. So in 1962, this movie grossed $69 million, which is, Rich, that's fucking crazy. That's big boy money. That's big boy money. Now, here's where it gets interesting. So I did a comparison chart, and I wanted to see like the ticks of this particular thing. So the adjusted box office, domestic box office for Lawrence Arabia is still only $522 million. But get this, Bridge on the River Kwai, I was wrong. It was not 300, like I said last week. Bridge on the River Kwai is actually sitting at 703.
Well, what's Lawrence's adjusted budget then?
522. Yeah. Oh, the adjusted budget I don't have.
Yeah.
522 in domestic box office, 522. So basically, for some reason, Bridge on the River Kwai, because it played all those years before we were super tracking things, it gets a higher. But again, it grossed $69 million in 62.
Mm-hmm.
That's insane, Richard. I don't call you Richard often. That's insane, Rich. That's crazy numbers. Because we have movies that are coming out in 2024 that can't make $69 million, right? And it played for years. It traveled around the country. It had intermission. It had overtures. It had all kinds of things. And then when it got re-released in 2012, when they restored it, it got a full week at the box office. So it's impressive. It's an impressive number, and it made a lot of money, and it needs to be seen. Critical response then and now. We use Rotten Tomatoes.
Screen.
Yes, the biggest. I will.
I'm glad I waited to see that for my first time on a big screen because it was just stunning.
Well, it is one of those things where you'll get certain people who go, "My home setup is so awesome." Yes,
no, it's not.
It is. It is, sure. But if there are certain movies that need to be seen on a big screen, there are certain movies that need to be where you need to be enveloped. You need to understand. And this is one of those movies. The vastness of a desert does not work particularly well on a TV. But when you're in a theater and you're watching it, it just looks huge. I told the story last week. I got to see the 70mm with my dad in DC around 2012 when it was coming around. Critical response then and now, Rich. Let's talk. So we use Rotten Tomatoes just as an aggregate. I thought it'd be interesting, Rich, to again, this is a universal kind of like praise. It's at 93%. And also 93% from people who've seen it, over 50,000 ratings. 93% on 132 reviews, Rich. And this is one of the ones we're going to go to, Rich, just because I just like to hear stupid people. And so I've taken a little bit of the Ebert stuff, and I've also taken some of the dumbest things by some of the smartest people in film. And here's some of the bad reviews, because I think it's funny. It's 7%. O'Toole looks a good deal like Lawrence's portraits, and he rides a camel with great authority. But he cannot project a sense of magic, and in moments of alleged spiritual agony, he merely looks dazed. What the fuck, Rich? I asked you. Wait, it gets better. Hold on. Some other bad ones.
There's a different approach to acting then than there is now. That feels like it's being judged by a simply modern perspective, which if you're going to do that, it's fine. Say it. Say for a modern audience, this might not work because, but don't
not see it.
Don't not reveal what the lens you're viewing this through.
How about this one, Rich? This one you'll love. Lewis Cook, Detroit Free Press. Full review, April 12th, 2021. Lawrence Arabia is big and often beautiful, but it satisfies few of the demands of real drama. Okay.
He deserves to be in Detroit.
He deserves to be in Detroit. Detroit's the murder capital of the world. Anyway, sorry, Goonies jumping in.
Here's hoping.
Here's hoping. Pauline Kael, who was of the time here. Lawrence Arabia is the most literate and intelligent and tasteful and the most beautiful of the modern, expensive spectacle films, and I wish it had never been made.
Now, Kael is one of our most literate film critics of all time.
Yes.
Not just the years she was writing. So I would like to sit down sometime probably with her and criticism and read it. I need to read more of her stuff. She a number of her essays.
She was great. She's really she's really good. But she's really also like
one of her blind spots is catching up with her stuff. And if this is one of the impetuses to get me to go do it, okay, so be it. Because
I read that one. That one is mean. And I don't know where it's going to go. This one was also from the New York Times in 1962. Bosley Crowther. So he was the film critic in
our friend Bosley.
Bosley Crowther. He looked like the picture of him is he has his glasses to his lip, like he's biting his glasses. It's a great picture. In his review, he says it reduces a legendary figure to conventional movie hero size, amidst magnificent and exotic scenery, but a conventional lot of action film cliches. So, let's get all those bad reviews out of the way, and let's go to this one, which I think is great. There's a moment in the film when the hero, the British eccentric soldier and author T. Lawrence, has survived a suicidal trek across the desert and is within reach of water and shelter. And he turns around and goes back to find a friend who's fallen behind. The sequence builds up a shot in which the shimmering heat of the desert reluctantly yields the speck that becomes a man, a shot that is held for a long time before we can even begin to see the tiny figure. On television, this shot doesn't work at all. Nothing can be seen. In a movie theater, looking at the stark clarity of a 70mm print, we lean forward and strain to bring in detail of the waves of heat. And for a moment, we experience some of the actual vastness of the desert and its unforgiving harshness. That review by Roger Ebert gives me chills. Chills, because he's right. There is that sequence where he goes back to the guy and there are so many good things in this movie. There's so like the performance from O'Toole is astonishing. We're going to talk in a few moments because I did some research. I was like, because this movie was nominated for 10 Academy Awards and only won 7.
Mm-hmm.
And the 3 that it lost are shocking, but also not so shocking. So we're going to get to it. But what I would say is, it's got eternal struggle. It's got this guy who's an eccentric. He's a little bit wonky, but he also believes in what he's doing. And then the deaths start happening, and it starts piling up, and it becomes this guy who not only likes the world he's in, but he starts to actually kind of
develop a bloodlust.
Yeah, he gets a bloodlust and he's narcissistic, and he starts believing he is one of the few characters in film history that is a narcissist that we don't hate. Like, you don't hate him. You feel bad for him he slowly goes over the edge, right? Where and he has the losses pile up and the people around him that get killed, and he has to, like, the guy he saves on the camel, right? The guy he goes back to get, the same day he has to kill him to keep the Arab tribes from killing each other. Mm-hmm. And he's astonished. Like, O'Toole is so good. I named the episode tonight The 7 Pillars of O'Toole, because we should all thank whoever, thank the heavens, whatever you want to thank, that Peter O'Toole was put on this earth, and we lived in a time when his movies were something that you and I could see, and we could pass on to others. And he's great. David Lean, there are shots in this movie that are so beautiful for how they're set up, how they look, right? I just don't know that we could ever get something like it. And God forbid somebody goes, I want to take a shot. I'll take a crack at remaking Lawrence of Arabia. Okay. Good luck. Good luck. Because there's just so much. Like, I was looking at it, the vastness of the movie, but also like there are so many fucking extras, Rich. Like in any given scene, at the one sequence where he's coming, where they're going, I think they're going to Aqaba, right? And there's at least 700 to 1,000 people on horses or camels with firearms. Like it's a vastness that we just don't get any, right?
Well, it's like how they used to advertise the ballyhoo for the big silent epics back in the 20s. Cast of thousands, and this probably did have a cast of thousands if you number up all the extras involved. It's sweeping, it's vast, and you can't do this story justice any other way than having all of that there.
Yeah, and he makes it like the decisions on the script, the decisions by Lean, what he kept, what he didn't. They, over time they change, right? Because this is a movie that has experienced a restoration and a director's cut, and they did fix some things, and some of the stuff well,
David Lean always had his original cut, and then they realized, well, this is kind of long, so they edited it out.
How long, Rich? Do you know how? Have you ever heard some of the
20 minutes?
Right, but have you ever heard
2 minutes? Excuse me.
Right, have you ever heard some of the stats on the actual I was reading about it. Some of the stats on the
but they kept editing it down to get it. Maybe we can squeeze one more showing in the theaters, and then for television they need a shorter cut still. And then Lean was like, okay, we can edit it down for TV, so long as we don't, that version never goes out to theaters. Of course, that version went out to theaters.
Liars, blaspheme.
Gee, a studio executive lied to a filmmaker? What are the fucking odds?
So the original release went 222 minutes, plus overture, intermission, exit music. The number of feet, the movie was 24,987.5 feet of 70 millimeter film, or 19,990 feet of 35 millimeter film. So if you stretch it out, it would go down a country road. And the reason it took on proportions was because some of the people at the studio at Columbia was trying to get into is it bigger and better than Gone with the Wind, right? There was a big to do when this movie came out about its length versus Gone with the Wind, and also how many feet of film it is. And it's but Gone with the Wind didn't have 70 millimeter film, so it was a stupid point. But the direction is solid. The cast is great. Everybody has things to do. The chemistry between him and Omar Sharif builds throughout the movie. It is a great learning experience of trying to figure out, man out of place, but he studied the world. And in real life, there are liberties taken here and there, right, with the historical accuracy of the film. But it's also one of those movies where you go, I don't care about historical accuracies. What is the screen telling me? And what the screen is telling me here is when you're watching it, Rich, this sequence, they give him an outfit that is for a prince of the desert, and he looks at his reflection in the mirror. The sequences where they're blowing up trains is electric, and that's the second half after the intermission. And even as the movie even as it hits 4 hours, you still have sequences with him and the officers he's dealing with, or the Arabs he's dealing with, when they take over the city and politics creeps in. it is an interesting look at what we've seen as a part of the world that has never been solved. Right, all these erring factions sitting in a room, and it's it's not going to get solved in the next 4 years.
It speaks to the arrogance of Europe and America that we'll kind of roll in. We don't understand a culture. We'll call them savages. We'll kind of like force our ways on them in a certain way, and then are shocked when they don't react well to everything. It's it's
well, and that's also one of the great parts of the movie, because he becomes a savage, right? There's a great moment where Omar Sharif is like, where he says something to him about violence, and he's like, "You're going to talk to me about violence? You've been killing everything under the sun." And it's right after a sequence where they kill a bunch of people that have attacked the village of Talas. And it's a famous massacre that happened of Turkish soldiers who left the Talas village with a bunch of dead people, and they basically all were murdered on the way out of Talas, or Talas, whatever it's called. And it is a brutal scene where the first member of the Anthony Quinn holds Lawrence back and says his family was from Talas. No prisoners, and he runs in and he gets killed, and then Lawrence picks up the mantle of no prisoners, and it's just a brutal fucking beatdown.
Yeah,
it's savage. And the last sequence you see is Omar Sharif walking towards Peter O'Toole, and Peter O'Toole is in white, but it's head to toe in blood, with hands on his on a knife covered in blood, and he just kind of takes him and like, come on, let's go, gotta go this way. And it's just it's endearing, but it's also like, what have you become? Because the bloodlust runs so thick. The narcissism, the idea that he's going to give the Arabs freedom, is something that we haven't learned since '62. Like, we're gonna get it's an arrogance that is still profoundly there, and that is why when you watch this movie, you can watch it, and some of the things you're like, I can't believe these things are still happening. And then but it still works on all those things. It is without a doubt.
It's a good argument for self-determination there, in that part of the world. But like I said, we're the arrogance of white Europe and white America coming in and just going, aha, we know better, because we.
But it's the definition of epic.
Whatever,
Yeah, no, it's the definition of epic. It is the gold standard by which other movies measure their epicness, right? And it's just one of those movies where you like I said, my biggest gift that I've given to a friend recently was I took them to see Lawrence of Arabia on the big screen. It is, if it comes near you, you should go. You shouldn't. Don't think about it. Go see it. 4 hours. It's some of the best 4 hours you ever spend in a theater. And people that you're with are some of the best people you ever meet coming out. You know what I mean? I'm so glad I finally saw it on a big screen. But so let's talk about legacy. The film's legacy is impeccable. You have here and there, you have talk of historical inaccuracies or whatever, but it's been widely regarded as one of the greatest biographical films ever made. But you and I were talking about legacies of this movie's greatest legacy, I think, Rich, for me, and I don't know how you feel about it, but for me is the filmmakers who call it inspiration, right? The filmmakers, it's like a who's fucking who, Rich, of people. You go, George Lucas, Sam Peckinpah, Stanley Kubrick, Martin Scorsese, Ridley Scott, Brian De Palma, Oliver Stone, Denis Villeneuve, Steven Spielberg, right? Who basically called it a miracle. It is Steven Spielberg, by the way, his favorite film, right?
Well, Spielberg and Scorsese were the ones who kind of spearheaded the 2000
the restoration,
restoration. So,
but also George Miller, You know what I mean? Like Catherine Bigelow. Like
you don't get the Mad Max films without this film. Honestly, there is an absolute direct line you can draw from Lawrence of Arabia and all that desert action right to
Fury
fucking
Road.
Fury.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. Like it's not just a great movie. It's also a movie that great people, you know, George Lucas, Frank Herbert, James Cameron, all of these people have seen this movie, and all of these people have turned like, and Rich and I, for anybody watching, whatever, we need to point this out. Rich and I had two of the same thoughts about tonight. So here is a picture of Lawrence of Arabia.
This
beautiful.
is the end. This is the end of the first half of the film.
Right. They've just found out that France and they've just found out that they're gonna screw Lawrence by basically the British and the French are basically gonna let him do all his rummaging through Arabia, and then they're gonna come in and split it into British and French. That's Claude Rains, by the way, in case you're wondering. But this is remarkably similar to this.
Because it's the exact same location, George Lucas.
And it's three characters. It's the exact same fucking thing, Rich.
It almost would have been better if he swapped R2 and Anakin to throw R2 over on the far right into the Claude Rains position.
Yeah, because he's short. Yes, because Claude Rains is short. But so you came up with this, and this is George Lucas clearly going, I'm so excited to be filming here. I came up with this. This is a literal legacy thing. So this is the shot of Lawrence of Arabia, it's one of the great shots. It's after they've knocked the train off. Lawrence gets up in silhouette and he's walking around the top of the train, and it's absolutely awe-inspiring. It's amazing. But, and this is where it gets fun, kids, it is very reminiscent of my favorite movie of all time. This. Because the silhouettes are what the key, the silhouettes in the sun are what the key is. Sand and silhouettes and sun. And this is very close to this. As iconic, as special. And you know, it's Spielberg's favorite movie. I just...
And both of those shots also have heat waves coming up too. Either, you know, in the actual shot, not just a still, there you see some of the you know, heat bending light.
It's bending light. It's amazing. But it's like Spielberg had the great comment. I saw it. It was the first time seeing a movie. I realized there are themes that aren't narrative story themes. There are themes that are character themes, and sometimes there are personal themes. And I realized I was never going back. It was what I was going to do. So, the legacy of this film is not only the fact that it's one of the greatest movies of all time, and that it is, you know, it's on the Congress list. It was part of the AFI Top 100. It went from in 2000 it was at 5, and in 2012 I think it was at 7. So it remained in the top 10 even after having 10 years and more movies. So it's not only that, but it's that it inspired a generation of filmmakers. And still inspires generation of filmmakers. We don't get Dune without this movie. We don't get it. Like, Dune is essentially this. If you watch portions of this movie and you watch Dune and Dune Part 2, there's a lot in common. Somebody's coming to the desert and they don't know the people and they don't understand things. And there's a lot of fighting. So yeah, I mean, we don't get a lot of those movies. And I just think it's one of those magic movies that, like, if you are a fan of films and you don't see it,
are you a fan of films?
Are you a fan of films? Yes. That's the question, Rich. That's the inevitable question. But this being so close, and it was so funny. I think the funniest thing was you sent yours to me, and I'm like, that's cool, because I was going to do this, and it was like, well, and it's very much a great minds think alike thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, years ago at the site, and it's something I want to get back to doing. We would have a recurring series of articles called Cinematic Swipe, and that was one of them where one filmmaker is very much consciously
saying,
aping.
I love you. I love you.
Yeah.
And it's a love letter. It's a love letter.
Yeah, I think it's in Hot Tub Time Machine where they have the scene that's very reminiscent of 16 Candles. Stuff like that.
Yeah, but it's one of those things where you look at it and you go, cool. And as you're watching it, that's the other thing. I mean, legacy-wise, you don't talk about epics. And so one of the things that we do have to discuss really quick, Rich, 7 of 10 Academy Awards. So this is part of our Oscar Decade Cavalcade, right? So it won 7 of 10 Academy Awards. We're gonna go over it really quick. The 10 it won, or 7 out of 10 it won. And here's where it gets fun, because then you have to do a little research. So it won Best Picture. It won Best Director. It was nominated for Best Actor, Best Supporting Actor, Best Adapted Screenplay. It won Art Direction Color, because at the time that was the thing. So John Box and John Stoll and Dario Simoni won for Set Decoration, Art Decoration. Won Cinematography, Freddie Young. It won Editing, even though it's 4 hours long. It won Best Original Score, Maurice Jarre, and won Best Sound, John Cox. Now, here's where it gets fun. It is a performance for the year, for the decades of Peter O'Toole. It's one of his best performances. It's his first major performance. But he lost, Rich. Do you know who he lost to in 1962?
Oh, this is gonna suck, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. Because he lost. He's one of the 3 losses. The 3 losses were actor, supporting actor, and screenplay. If you can believe that.
Okay.
But again, okay. So in 1962, the Best Actor nominees were, drum roll, please, Peter O'Toole, right? We know that. Peter O'Toole for Lawrence of Arabia. Marcello Mastroianni for Divorce Italian Style. Jack Lemmon for Days of Wine and Roses. Burt Lancaster for Birdman of Alcatraz. And Gregory Peck for Atticus Finch in To Kill a Mockingbird. And Atticus Finch and Gregory Peck beat Lawrence of Arabia and beat Peter O'Toole. Interesting. I don't, like, it's not one of the ones where you go, okay.
I can't be mad about that.
You can't be mad about it. It's fine.
I can be disappointed maybe a little bit.
Disappointed, but sure. Can't be mad. Can't be mad about
if he had lost to Jack Lemmon, then I'd be like, well, I don't see that. And I'm a big Jack Lemmon fan. The Apartment is one of my all-time favorite films. But
so support it. No, you can't get mad about it. Because Atticus Finch is one of the greatest characters ever put on film. Gregory Peck is phenomenal. So, 1962, supporting actor. Here we go. This is where it gets really. Terrence Stamp, Billy Budd for Billy Budd. Omar Sharif for Lawrence of Arabia. Telly Savalas for Birdman of Alcatraz. Victor Bueno for Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. And the winner was Ed Begley, Sr., for Sweet Bird of Youth. That you can get mad about. Because Omar Sharif is really great in this movie. Then, the only other category it lost, Best Adapted Screenplay in 1962. So, as we were talking about Wilson and Bolt, and the nominees that year were... The nominees were ridiculous, Rich, for 1962, because it was just fucking crazy. William Gibson for The Miracle Worker. Vladimir Nabokov for Lolita, based on the Nabokov novel.
I don't think he wrote that screenplay. Why do I have a feeling that his name is there because it was a blacklisted writer?
Maybe. Robert Bolt
and
Michael Robert Bolt and Michael Wilson for adapting the 7 Pillars of Wisdom for Lawrence of Arabia. David and Lisa by Eleanor Perry. And the winner To Kill a Mockingbird, Horton Foote, adapting Harper Lee. So, it's a rare occurrence when we look at when you're looking through, Rich, and when I'm researching, and I look down the list, and it says didn't win. My first reaction always is to go and look, and the only one I'm happy about, like, I can understand To Kill a Mockingbird for screenplay. I can also understand Gregory Peck for Atticus Finch, but it's very tough. It's because Peter O'Toole. If there's no Peter O'Toole and Lawrence of Arabia, there's no Lawrence of Arabia. So, but it is beloved by many. It is the rare epic that keeps on giving. And where can people find your stuff, Rich, that keeps on giving?
My stuff can be found at filmbuffonline.com. We have a Facebook page that lets you know when we post new stuff up, as well as give you some fun little tidbits like historical things for on this date in history. For example, on this date in history, Sam Raimi's great Western film, The Quick and the Dead, was released into theaters. I don't have a Quick and the Dead font Sam Raimi t-shirt, so I am wearing my Evil Dead Sam Raimi t-shirt today. I also do two other film related podcasts. One is Film Scribes, which is the podcast of the Philadelphia Film Critics Circle, which I am a member of, and we just dropped our latest episode over the weekend, where we three of us talk about some of our favorite films that we saw during the Sundance Film Festival. My other podcast is called The Big Picture Podcast. I do that with my bestest friend of all time, Natasha Bogutsky. We don't have an episode that's new yet. In fact, she's jetting off to Rome in about 16 hours. I'm driving her to the airport tomorrow.
And we also get her in March. She'll be here.
Yeah, she's coming. She'll be back here on this show in March. But in the meantime, though, you can always find me on Twitter and Blue Sky as @FilmBuffRich.
You can find me, JW the Movie Guy, on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, IMDb. I'm not on TikTok, so don't look for me there. You can also find me on Tuesday nights with my good friends. And tomorrow night we're celebrating a bit of an anniversary, 50th episode on the Indie Escape of Loud Nerdy on the Indie Escape Network with Kyle and Jerry, and we'll be talking about that and celebrating tomorrow night. You can join us there. And Lawrence Arabia is fantastic. We're going to be talking about different things. We're going to be talking about television ads. By the way, just so we're clear, best television ad from the Super Bowl, just so we're clear, I'm going to say it plain and loudly. Harrison Ford in a Jeep, directed by James Mangold, is pretty damn good. Pretty good about going different ways in life. And it's a great commercial. You got to see it. It's so much fun. It's nice. I like that.
I didn't watch it at all.
We will be back next week, Rich. And this is the movie we're doing next week. I'm kind of excited. I haven't seen it in a while. So I'm kind of excited to go back. We will be doing Amadeus. The man, the music, the madness, the murder, the motion picture. Everything you've heard is true. Milos Forman's fantastic Oscar winner from the 80s. And one of the truly two great performances in one movie, which doesn't happen often.
I love that tagline of everything you've heard is true, simply because it's not.
It's not, and that's why it's great. It's a fantastic tag.
But we'll get into that next week.
We'll talk about it next week. Thank you for joining us tonight. We'll see everybody next week. Yes. Please like and subscribe on our Instagram page, our Facebook page, or the YouTube. And have a great week. Go see a movie, Brave New World, The Eighth Pillar of Wisdom. I wrote A Silly People, Barbarous and Cruel. Anyway, thanks for joining us on the 7 Pillars of Peter O'Toole episode of Generation Movie. We'll see everybody